everybody. Cam K here, back with you for the Power Hour. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there. For whatever reason, it was skipping quite a bit with the live broadcast. I think it's got something to do with the connection, potentially. Let me know, though, if I am choppy, if that's coming through okay, or if there is some choppiness with my mic as well. Not much I can really do if that is the case. That's sometimes what happens with live broadcasts. If the connections or YouTube is having issues, sometimes it just doesn't read very well. For whatever reason, the media source is not different from what it was before, but for whatever reason, it was choppy on the intro. We are still quite a ways away from the start of the 2024 season. However, it has been a busy day for myself working the phones. There has been some conversations that have taken place with the Pinty series and its competitors for 2024. There is some information that's been exchanged. What the full information is, it's not for me to say, but the conversations have already started for next year. There are lots of rumors out there, and obviously tonight we are going to try and get to some of those rumors, whether there's any legitimacy that sounds to those claims, or whether or not there is a difference of opinion. Right now, there is still a season that's going to be had. It's not going anywhere. Now, there's a couple of things that I think we have to make mention of. And, rumors sometimes have legitimacy behind them. There's other ones that come out, it seems we get them every year, that are not fact. They're just somebody's opinion or what they believe. So the schedule was not coming out today. I believe that the plan has been communicated to the teams as to some potential changes and potential situations that might occur this year. But in terms of a schedule being released, that was never announced. So I didn't expect that was ever going to be announced today. The likelihood is that there is going to be some changes to the schedule, and it's been pretty much confirmed that there will be changes. The full extent, I'm not at liberty to say. However, it does appear that there is going to be change, which has been a long time coming. I think the reality of the situation right now is we have to look at all sides. Tracks probably are going to go year to year. I would think they're not going to be signing more than 3-year contracts. Race dates are also all being fluctuated because of Toronto, I essentially believe to be out. And the reason that I believe it's out is because of the situation that the city is in. So, because of the Olympics happening this year, the IndyCar race in Toronto is now going to be a week later than it normally is. Now, if you know the schedule that we had this year, that poses a big problem here for the series because that's in the middle of the Western Swing. I wouldn't expect that the series waited that long with the Western Series if they were waiting on Toronto. I can't see that. Because you've got 2 events out west, potentially 3. I don't know if they're going to... I mean, I've said for a while, I don't really know why you'd continue doing the double headers at Sutherland. I think you could easily just do a 300 lapper or 250 out there and it'd be fine. So right now, I think Toronto is the likelihood of it's being gone. As terrible as it is, and I mean, I understand that scheduling difficulties come into it, but it sucks only because if that's the course that they're going to take, it's likely not their fault. It's likely nothing that they could have done about that. If the track schedule with the city was not planned, which we know it wasn't because of the IndyCar announcement, it was one of the last races that was decided. And the other side with this is we have no guarantee that it's going to happen again next year. The IndyCar series, when they announced their schedule in Toronto, it was only announced as a 1-year deal. That's worrisome for the IndyCar series, obviously for Canadian race fans, but if that's the case, maybe this was preactive. Does it, again, is that set in stone? Well, we have to wait for the actual schedule to come out. But, I mean, if you're going to sign, if IndyCar is going to do it a week later and we've already got scheduled races as we did this year, I can't see, especially because we don't know the terms of the Western tracks. We know terms for some racetracks right now. We know it's a 3-year deal for Eastbound Park. We know it's a 3-year deal for Ohsweken Speedway. I don't expect that we're doing 2 next year at Ohsweken Speedway. I think that was a throw-in because of a schedule change. I really think that that's what happened there. So you take it back to 1, and I just, to me, 2 races there isn't as special. I think having 1 race out of Ohsweken Speedway. Kieran Wall says, shame the Toronto Pinty's race was great this year, and it's been getting better each year, Kieran. It is a hotbed for the series in terms of eyes, and while it is a little troublesome because it's not an admission-based event, the big issue with going to Toronto is the fact that it's on a free Friday. People are not paying admission to go and see that event. So that's gonna be a little obvious too, that there's other hindrances with it. Whereas if they're going to one of these other tracks, a lot of the times they're getting paid to go there. And I would expect the Western Series does create a bit of a Western, like there is some involvement, obviously financial. There's definitely a component there to go all the way out to Alberta and Saskatchewan. Now, I've been on the belief that I really don't know if a Western swing really is the best call here. I understand that we are a Canadian-wide series, but we're not at the current time. I mean, I know that's an intention that all of the officials and NASCAR South really would want, but I don't feel financially the series is in a position where they can do that. It's nice in theory to go out to Atlantic Canada, to go out to Western Canada. Obviously, Eastbound Park has provided some assistance for drivers that are going out there, but Western Canada, there really, I don't believe, is any. And going out there for a week right now for what was 3 races, that's a lot of work that you got to do. And these teams aren't $1 million operations. They're not major or multi-million dollar, we'll say, operations. A lot of them do not have the revenue or the sponsorship to be able to go out there on a regular basis, do a schedule like this. I know it's a circumstantial thing this year. Really, I think the bigger question is if it does not happen, if Toronto does not happen this year, my bigger wonder is what's next year. Because that's a bigger worry for me. D says, are they still planning 2 races at CTMP? It feels like the Labor Day weekend was pretty sparse compared to years past this past year. I can't really say Labor Day. I can tell you, though, Victoria Day, it was absolutely insane how many people were there. Now, D, I think the difference that next year poses is that the Labor Day sprints have the support classes, and I'm going to call them support classes even though they might be closer to headliners with the Trans Am series coming in. I don't know 100% if they are going to go to. I cannot see a way that CTMP is not 2 races next year on the schedule. They get such good crowds as CTMP, not just camping, but just people that come for the day. And the car counts are also normally really, really big. So I can't really see them going backwards on that. And I'm not saying that's... I think Toronto would have happened easily as long as there was more... there wasn't the schedule conflict that led to the race being signed a lot later than normal. Jim says, I don't know the last time IndyCar didn't have at least one race in Canada, so they will be somewhere, I'm sure. I think you've got to go... Jeez. I think there was 2008, perhaps, was... And I'm going to have to... I'm checking this right now because I feel that there was one year. It was the in-between IndyCar and kart. They had the Steelback Grand Prix of Toronto in 2000, and yes. So it was a one-year hiatus, 2008, between kart, which was 2007 Steelback Grand Prix of Toronto, and then the Honda Indy starting in 2009. There could be some interest perhaps in going to Montreal again, but the real reality is I think NASCAR's looking to go there in the future. Mont Tremblant's not going to happen. Canadian Tire, I don't see IndyCars going there. Vancouver and IndyCar, not going to go there either. I believe it was construction, Jim. It was the side that used to have pit road. They were putting the hotels in there, so they weren't able to put them on that side of they weren't able to do basically the race that year. But there was also, I believe, funding issues as well, because once Molson dropped their race sponsorship, it became Steelback for, I think, 1 year. And then it was the Honda Indy Toronto when they came back in 2009. So right now, I get it. If that's the case, I mean, obviously none of this has been announced, but I think we could kind of see the writing on the wall with them. If we had 100% the Indy cars back on their regular schedule, there's no question that they would be back on the schedule as well. It was, and I kind of felt that as soon as we weren't hearing stuff about Indy cars, and it was, and then them pushing it a week later, well, you can't push something when there's not anywhere to push it to, because we've already got that weekend filled. So, Jeremy says, let's be honest, once DJ bows out and retires, the series is dead in the water. Can't see Glenn Steyer's continuing to pump money into it, and I just don't see how the series would support itself. It's a tough question, Jeremy, for sure, because I will argue a point in that the Quebec fans won't let this series die. You're looking at it, I guess, from the Ontario side. I think right now what's holding and keeping everything alive is the investments and the support from Quebec. It is no question that there are a lot of people in Ontario that support the series. There are some great Ontario partners, but the majority of the racers, the majority of a lot of funding is coming from Quebec. That's absolutely true. And we are finding it hard. I think the teams in the series is finding it a lot harder to find support elsewhere. So whether it has to be a change in the way that they approach things, whether it's a change on the costs, something needs to happen in order to try and bring that back. You also have to remember the Quebec government and even Newfoundland's government puts a lot of stock and a lot of money and really does a good job in promoting the events that they have there. However, they don't really do that elsewhere. especially in Ontario. Just give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Pets. Um, Terry says when Toronto hosted the Pan Am Games, it was close that IndyCar was going to come to CTMP instead. I do remember that, yes. And there was discussions about that. The reason why I say that that's not going to happen is just it. And I'm not saying that it's not going to happen. It's just there's been no discussion about them going to CTMP instead. Would I like to see it? Absolutely, absolutely. Jeremy says, yeah, Quebec will be the final resting place within 5 years because apparently the series is too good for Peterborough. The cars are barely faster than APC. But again, they put these emojis here, and I can't see the actual schedule here, but they are too good. It's laughable. You're entitled to your opinion, man. It's. I don't know the reason why they don't go to Peterborough. I would think it has to do with some of the regulations. You have to remember, NASCAR does have their own set of rules, and if tracks can't conform to it, they can't go there. Plain and simply. We also have to remember is that they have to pay for NASCAR to go there as well. So we'll clear up that right now, that I do think that Toronto likely is not going to happen, mainly for the fact that we've booked it a week later. That makes it really difficult, especially if they had. So this is the way that I'm thinking about it: is if you book it a week later, but we already signed a deal, and I think they did with Edmonton and Sutherland. I feel like those were like 2 or 3 year deals to come back. You can't just break that because the Toronto team schedules the race later. You just can't change that. Afterlife. Oh, sorry. Jim says we raced at Langley Speedway Saturday, and the City of Hampton. City of Hampton was the sponsor. That's great. Afterlife. CTMP would have to put up fences around the whole track for IndyCar to run there. Apparently, I would imagine because of the guardrails, they wouldn't do it. Right? Like I can't see them being okay with that, and they need catch fences as well. And I don't believe, if I'm not mistaken, Afterlife, I don't believe that there is catch fences all the way around CTMP either. So yeah, that definitely would happen. Jeremy Smith says because the series wants the owners to dump money into the track that it doesn't need, that's what it boils down to. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to there, because the series wants the owners to dump money into the track that it doesn't need. I'm not sure what that means. If you're saying that maybe the series wants the owners to dump money into... I'm not sure. The track, as far as my understanding, the track is the one that pays NASCAR to go there, not the teams paying to go to the tracks. But just clarify that, Jeremy. I'm not 100% sure. So again, that's one of the parts of the schedule. We already know eastbound. We already know Oshwegan. I don't expect that second race at Oshwegan Speedway. I think that was a one-time deal. I think in terms of iCar, probably back. We already know GP3R is back. That's for sure not changing. Eastbound, obviously, like I said, is not changing. I don't expect CTMP to change. Whether it does or it doesn't, I don't know. I was a little concerned at first that maybe the reason that they went to go to CTMP and having Trans Am that weekend is maybe that the Pinty series was not coming back there. I don't know. Afterlife says too many flying parts, lots of safety stuff from what I've been told. It would be cool to host, but it would wreck sightlines. That's true. I also don't know, in terms of the Andretti straightaway, would that be ultimately very safe? Because I just... especially with those Indy cars going down there, if they make contact, how fast they could go, it potentially could be some, especially because I'm pretty sure they don't have enough infrastructure there. D says, is there ever any plans to go back to New Hampshire, or did COVID kill any plans? I don't believe that has to do with COVID at all, actually, D. I think that came down to a financial decision. I think the reality of that trip is it didn't really, the races weren't really that great. Whether that's the car or it's just a matter of people not being used to that track, I kind of would feel they would have done better on even shorter of a racetrack than that. The problem is that NASCAR doesn't really go anywhere that they would fit the bill. I'd say you could go to like Bristol or you could go to Martinsville, but they really don't go to tracks that are short. And our cars, I don't believe, have had enough testing to see how they'd actually do. While it was different and it was new, that's great. I personally say what you do is you just build a track out of pit road and the front stretch, and you build a short one. D says, why haven't they considered Watkins Glen? I don't know that they haven't. I actually brought that up the other day, as I actually think that Watkins Glen would be fantastic. It's closer than a lot of other tracks. It's on the, right by New York, the border, and 3/4 of our field are, legends on road courses. So that was fantastic. I think Jim has another point. If it was a Cup weekend that had they had the Pinty series along with those other divisions for a Cup weekend, maybe that's a different story. That's the difference. I'm going to argue, D, is that Jeremy, is that there is definitely an audience. There's an audience about the Pinty series right now. I mean, Jeremy says that there isn't, but as of right now, you can say that. I really don't know, though. I'm aware of that, but if the Mexico series can run Phoenix, money. I would assume, D, it's money. That's what it comes down to. Euro International, I agree, honestly. It's tough. Absolutely tough. Let's see. Terry says, when IndyCar officials came to check the track, they were happy with the catch fences where they are. They don't need to add anymore. Jim says, the insurance companies also look at your track and decides, yes, that's very true. Mailbox says, I loved the New Hampshire Pinty's races. Not too many people go to sport races. Jeremy says there's an audience for trucks too, and they still race largely in front of empty stands. Come on, dude. Well, Jeremy, I mean, that's the reality of a lot of racing right now. I'd say the way you got to go is you got to go and pack the racetrack at where people will go. And I think one of the biggest things is that, and I kind of fault NASCAR for this in the States, because they do this as well, is I think that they've, instead of going to tracks where they could pack the stands completely, those weekly short tracks, they don't do that. They went to these big stadiums expecting that hundreds of thousands of people would continue to come week in and week out. That just isn't happening. So now all of a sudden we're getting all these tracks that have a whole bunch of empty seats. The other side of it too is local. And not just local tracks, but local drivers. When we went to Delaware last year, a local driver by the name of Ray Morneau Jr. had probably 70% of the crowd there. Were Ray Jr. fans. You kind of need that. DJ has been in the series for a long time. He goes to Delaware. He's always a fan favorite. But the issue right now is we don't have anything. You don't have these weekly names that are coming in and running each week. You have a lot of big names, for sure. Lots of guys with lots of money, but a lot of drivers from out of province that a lot of people here have no idea who they are. Tag was an Indy Ranger where people knew from IndyCar, so that definitely helped. But it's the similarity of when people were coming into the series. Yes, you're right. Afterlife, it was a support weekend for ARCA. They weren't even supporting the Cup Series when they went to New Hampshire. Jeremy says, can't have these teams spending all that money to go down there and have no butts in the seats. Absolutely. And you have to remember, it's all about the money, right? They had a really good opportunity to turn Noah Gragson into ambassador for this series, and instead he fulfilled the sponsorship obligations and since hasn't said anything. Do I think that they missed the boat a little bit on Noah? Sure. Was Noah the most approachable at Delaware? I didn't think so. I was there. I had tried to speak with him several times. He was just very, very busy and on a very tight schedule. The other thing they have to remember is they've also got to do whatever NASCAR tells them to. So our series up here, if they want Gragson to be utilized and it to be out there that he is driving for the Pinty series, they will make sure that he is. If they don't, make sure he's not. Again, it's a lot easier to say this from an outside perspective, Jeremy, but I mean, as somebody that's been involved with this series for a couple of years now, I can tell you that there is a lot of hoops you got to go through. It's not as simple as just doing this and doing that. Lots of stuff has to go through, has to get approved, and I understand it. It sounds like the easiest thing, but it isn't always. ARCA races in empty stands these days unless it's a local upper Midwestern short track, which you only have a few now. Again, it's the same situation though, Jim, is there's a difference between having drivers that are standouts, drivers that everybody knows. The other side of ARCA right now is it's not been that strong. I think if they were to take the East and the West, get rid of those and just have one division for everything, probably would make it a little bit stronger. But the other side of it too, Jim, is that they're going to these big stadium tracks with their main series as well. They don't need to do that. Just focus on short tracks right now. Build it up to what ARCA was known for the longest time. They would do the odd race at Daytona, but I don't think they need to go to a lot of these tracks right now, especially when they've got Cup guys or Xfinity guys right there. ARCA is 3 competitive cars, and that's it. Brad Smith finished 5th in points, for God's sakes. Absolutely true. Okay, well, I've been watching the series for 20 years, so I know what I'm talking about. I've spent a lot of money and trying to be a positive voice to this series, and now I could care less. Well, I mean, I can't force your mind. I've been watching the series for over 20 years too. Right? But at the end of the day, you can only do what you do. If you don't care about it anymore, that's your decision. Right? You've either got to be somebody that just complains about it, Jeremy, or somebody that tries to help, whether getting involved in the series or getting involved with a team. It is, but Jim, that's that. So Jim says it's 90% pass through, but rides, buy rides. It's the same in Pinty's. A lot of these names come in and they rent their ride. They're not coming in with building their own team from the ground up, right? So it's kind of everywhere in these lower divisions, and it's a common problem. And I think every single one of us knows what the issue comes down to, and it's cost. It's affordability. It's also not really attractive to a lot of partners. We in Canada especially have to find a way to attract businesses and corporations to coming to our series. And I will say, what's one of the biggest issues right now that we have is brand recognition. I don't know any of the where are the big brands of Canada being represented in the series right now. That's the hardest question for me. You have so many that are part of it. Jeremy says, I'll care when the director stops snubbing small town tracks. The marketing of the series is a joke, the presentation an even bigger joke, but they can't race on tiny grassroots tracks. I mean, where else would you like to go? I'm very curious because there really isn't a lot more tracks to go to. In Ontario, you have Flamborough, Peterborough, Sauble, Full Throttle, Grand Bend. Not a lot of choices there. Outside of in Quebec, I think there might be even less. I think you've got Montmagny. Atlantic Canada, you've got Speedway 660, Oysterbed, which can't hold a Pinty's race, Petty International, and Eastbound Park out there. Out west, there's not as many either. It's easy to say that the directors are snubbing tracks, but you have to remember there's a cost and there's safety measures and there's other things like infrastructure that has to be in place for people to put it there. Obviously, that's the political answer that we give, right? But right now, exactly, D, you used to have Canadian Tire, Home Hardware. We lost